welcome everyone. Our speakers today are Gwen Woods, who was born and raised in San Francisco before moving to Houston, Texas in 1980 with her late husband, Michael A. Woods Sr., and their three sons, Monroe, Michael Jr., and Mario. The family purchased a home and resided in Houston for 10 years, where Gwendolyn was employed as a district manager for a cosmetics company for more than 10 years before returning to San Francisco to care for her mother. She credits her son as being her greatest strength and inspiration to persevere during the hard times of trying to make ends meet in San Francisco. On December 2nd, 2015, her youngest son, Mario Woods, was shot more than 20 times by the San Francisco Police Department. Gwendolyn has waged a relentless fight to achieve justice. The grieving mother, she shares her words, "It is my hope to project the beauty of my Marmar to the world until my last breath." Our other speaker, Lisa Bishop, is a Spanish bilingual national board certified educator with the San Francisco Unified School District. She is passionate about literacy in all its forms and helps her students become published authors while still in middle school. Lisa is the president-elect of the California School Library Association and is the force behind the Sean Monterossa Knowledge Up Free Social Justice Library. She's the co-author with her partner of 35 years, Jerry Courtney, of the latest protest book trilogy documenting the protests during the Trump era. It's called Breaking News: President Trump's Greed and Insanity 2019 to 2020. So without any more need for, with the introductions, I now turn it over to Gwen.
Hey everyone, first I want to apologize. My camera's not working on my Zoom, so forgive me and let Mario stand in place of me. So starting off this conversation, I wanted to piggyback off of something Magic had stated. For Chesa Boudin, I did a PSA form going into it, and I think it, what's the young lady that had been on the police commission board for years? And they put all this money into this campaign for her. I think we spoke up loudly regarding what changes need to happen in San Francisco. She, to me, when I said, okay, I would do this, I knew a bit of Chase's history, not all, but I think we're in desperate mode at this point. Anything would be better than this lady. You sat on the police commissioner for years, never said anything about their bad behavior. And that goes to Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris as well, because they never spoke once against police reform when it came to San Francisco Black and brown and poor folk. For Chesa, I think when we speak about him coming on board, and I right now, I applaud him. He stood firm on his ground when he pressed charges with Keith O'Neill. Keith O'Neill came out of my community. So all the hardships that the Bayview area takes, I understood where this young man came from. I think the definition of insanity would be doing the same thing over and over. And so that young lady that was running for the district attorney's office, she would have been the definition of insanity to me. So it was just, hey, listen, I'm going to push for Chesa to be our district attorney, because I think he'd be more empathetic. He could stand in and look at Black and brown issues, and he'd have some sort of compassion for the plight. I think you have a police, and I think it was Malia Cohen that had said regarding Mario, he was executed by a multiracial squad. But here's the problem. When they put on a uniform in the morning, they go out and they're one color and it's blue. And so that mindset, it's not what or who executed my child. It's the mindset. It's what they adapted into. They came into a culture and a climate in that police department in San Francisco, and they adapted to it. And so the most rogue ones, I find too, could be the ones that look just like me and Mario. And I think it was Paul Henderson And now he sits on the police commission board. And I beg to differ with him when he came out on September 10th, and he expressed that Mario was executed by a policy. So you see the jargon that they set up for us when, and you guys stop me if I go over time, they set up all these jargons. When you think of Breonna Taylor, the jargon was she was a soft target. My Mario was a victim of policy. No, it's men. It's brutal men with a brutal mindset. And they're on your police force. And they come in and they execute and annihilate. They don't kill and murder. Because when they say that on news, it's more comfortable to deal with. What they did to my child was an execution. And what they did to everybody else, and if it's not on video, you all should question that. I said, if you don't know before Breonna Taylor or George Floyd, rest their beautiful souls, if you don't know the names of the blood on San Francisco's doorstep, you have to go in and educate yourself. Because if Floyd George and Breonna Taylor jolted you into some kind of a reckoning, or this ideology that the police may not be your heroes, to some of us, they're terrorists. They've always been a terrorist to my community. You have to understand 2010, there was, Idris Steele. 2011, there was Kenneth Hardy. Then there was Alex Nieto, Almacar Perez, Jessica Williams, Louis Gongora, Keita O'Neill, which, thank you, Chaser, you putting that forward, because if we don't get this kind of justice, we have to live vicariously through the justices that we are getting through George Floyd. We have to live but we're still broke. Because see, I can still video my child and see his last moments of this execution. And there was so much that was ravaged on his body. And I want them police to know, it was so much ravaged on his body. He was hit with so much. This poor kid was so confused and so out of it. Imagine me punching you in your face 20 times. You're not going to know which way is up. And so there was a mother that said to me, and I spoke earlier, there was a mother that said to me regarding Mario, that one of the officers that shot him shot her son in the back of the head. So I'm assuming that's the officer that gave him 2 bullets to the back of his head. And so these things you can say, and again, I forgot, with Paul Henderson, Mario was his policy. No, he wasn't. It wasn't pen and paper that executed my child. It was these 5 beasts that deemed that his life wasn't worth apprehending and taking into custody. And again, I can never not forget, wait a minute, y'all know how to apprehend Dylan Roof, who walks in the Bible study and annihilates 9 people. And he's loaded down in assault weapons. But he's given a courtesy of a bulletproof vest and a Burger King burger. And then you have Brock Turner, who goes in Stanford, and he rapes this young lady broad daylight. And the judge says to him, now I don't want to ruin your reputation or your future. You get 6 months, and he barely does 3 months. And then you talk about the young man that goes down at the protest in Kenesha, and then officers are passing him by. He has assault weapons on him. They see this. And he takes out 2 protesters. That is then the 2 types of policing that is impacted, or it's in place. And until, listen, we have to start getting rid of them, because there's no accountability. San Francisco has not had an accountability since Chase stood on that. And let me be honest. George Gascon is in LA. LA is, they better hold his feet to the fire, because he was literally chased out of San Francisco. And this is to Rick, and this is to my Lionheart equipped him. They literally chased him out of San Francisco. That's what it was. When all these things happen and you can't look at the situation and say there is a problem with San Francisco policing and nationwide. I said to someone earlier, listen, to the core of my DNA, I believe they call in, they go out hunting, and they call nationwide to each other. It's your turn to get a notch under your belt. Go and do it. Listen, you can't tell me that policy, that's just poorly trained. And then they lie on their application. My child was 5'4". and he was 144 pounds wet. And they had on his death certificate, yeah, well, on the coroner's, he was 169 and 5'9". You know why they do that? Because they demonize. So if we have to go to court, we want this person to be as menacing as he can be. He cannot make mistakes like white boys. He cannot. White and brown and poor folks, you cannot. And that's the problem. Nobody wants to talk about this two types of policing. There were some things thrown out there after George Floyd that somebody committed to on the heights of San Francisco level. And I see it fell through when Magic, you said going to that police commissioner and defund, and nothing's been defunded from. Listen, you don't even have to defund them, but you can start firing them. You can start firing them. But then they're going to go to another police station. That's why they need to go to jail. They need to go to jail. If you take Kenneth Hardy, the officer in Kenneth Hardy case, he left and he transferred to Alameda and went on to have a consensual, he says, with a 15, 14-year-old young man. Where's that consensual at? This is a 14-year-old man. And you think of Tamara Rice, and I say, listen, in Tamara Rice's case, they fired this officer because they realized he lied on his application. So if you guys would do the work in the beginning, then maybe we can see less of this. But in Tamir's case, right, you fired him after the fact. That child may still have been here if you would have did your job. So the job is poorly executed on every and all levels. I love what Chess is doing because he dismantled Gascon's department. And that's how you have to do it. This whole thing is a cesspool. It has to be dismantled. And somebody please tell Paul Henderson, I beg to differ. And so now you're running interference and you're covering for these officers. Mario was not executed by a policy. It was 5 brutal men that had no empathy or compassion to take my child into custody. He took 2 bullets straight to the back of his head. Half his thumb was shot off. I can tell you everything that happened before that. We have to put on the table this, you can't do, they adapt into this culture and this climate, and it's still there. I had a good friend, Joey Babs, worked for San Francisco Police. And he came out, even right after they were still spewing racist jargon. And they blackballed Joey. And he had to fight hard for his job. I was proud of him when he called and told me it's that, but you had to stand on a truth. Let's stand on a truth of right and wrong. They're just dogmatic when it comes to Black and brown and poor folks. And if it's poorly trained, because obviously, listen, the young man that they killed on Market Street a few months back, I still have to differ. I have to consider everything probably is not what they say it is. Everything that's police department, we all need to be questioning. They've always been to the Black and brown community terrorist. And now you guys are starting to see what we have been suffering at the hands of this group. And I say, listen, I define them as this, and this is how I define them. They are a terrorist group, but they're disguised as a police department. And they've always been that way to my community and my people. They gracefully can resign now. Sergeant Kempinski, who said he took Bayview, and he said he took the Bayview to kill niggas. His words. He should never have been able to politely and gracefully resign out. You should have lost your pension and everything that's inclusive of that. Because if it's you and I on a job and we spew any type of racism, sexism, homophobia, and by right, we all need to go. You should not be on my police department with pending investigations. 2 of Mario's officers have pending investigations. We have to still make sure we keep on the ends of our tongues every name that this terrorist group has filled the street with, all the blood that seeps in the cracks of San Francisco. And let's be honest, when They went to Kamala Harris to speak in regards to Mario and police reform. She said nothing. But now between her and Nancy Pelosi, you guys want to be on CNN, and now you want to talk police reform. But it's a little too late for Idris Steele. It's a little too late for Kenneth Hardy. It's a little too late for Alex Nieto. It's a little too late for Amilcar Perez. It's a little too late for Jessica Williams. It's a little too late for Louis Gongora. It's a little too late for O'Shane Evans. It's a little too late for Keith O'Neill. And it's a little too late for my child. I do think those people owe us an apology. Because we're Black and brown and po folks, we didn't matter to you. That's just what it is. And I don't have time to be okay with this, because it wasn't okay when they could have said something. Even in the time of, if you think in terms of now, can you say something now? Now that Chancellor is the only one that had the heart to stand up and say, the wrong that you do to a community and a people, somebody needs to pay. The only problem now, we need to go after, these are it's easier to think when you talk about these rookies. Because I know in Keith O'Neill's situation, it was a rookie, 3 days on the job. It's easier. I want to see now go after these long-term, these seasoned officers that has this history and been having a history where they have gone out and they've punched women in the mouth because they were addicted to something and they felt like they didn't have a right. And I know the story from someone that told me there was an officer that laughed about it. And it was actually, yes, my friend, and I'm thankful for him, Joel Baptist, said about that officer, he was a captain, and laughed about how he punched this young lady in the mouth, knocked her teeth out. This is what they feel they can do to us as Black men, Black women, brown men, brown women. And if we, God forgive, we have addictions, there's no understanding there. It's just your life does not matter. But we have to, and then when you think, I think right after Mario, there was an officer in the Bayview that did report the ongoing racism in there, and they blackballed him. So I think in terms of, I don't know, they could do a better, am I impressed with what they've done? No, I'm not. You can't just put me a Black Lives Matter plaque in a police station and think it's okay. It's not. You got to change. It's a mindset that's in that police station. That mindset's going to go out into the street. So yes, you got to do more. By more, I mean, they have to be accountable. You have to make them accountable. And thank you for allowing me to speak, everyone, regarding this, because I still think the problem is large.
Great, and thanks for sharing, Gwen. Now we're going to turn it over to Lisa Bishop.
That's just what Miss Woods just said. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but this is so tearing up, just tearing me apart, and it's been tearing me apart for a long time. I was there at the big rally against our police department after your son was murdered, Miss Woods. I went there with a group of educators. We're sick and tired of our Black and brown children being murdered by the police here in San Francisco. So there are a group of us. We're not gigantic yet, but we're growing for sure. That's encouraging. So I've seen many of my students either murdered in gang violence or by drug addiction, and then being captured by the police or something minor. They weren't treated like Dylan Roof, and taken to Burger King, or treated with kid gloves or handed water bottles after they shot 2 protesters in Kenesha. And yeah, they don't treat them with kid gloves. And the brutality in our schools too, our police department, we want our police out of our schools. We don't want police in our schools. We want social workers. We want people who understand the 400 years of history of looting Native peoples and Black and brown people. So the looting of the communities of color in this country, I mean, this country is built on the looting of the Native Americans and Black
Yes.
people who were not brought here willingly.
Yes.
And once we start understanding that history as white people, we can start unraveling and helping and being allies and more radical allies. I mean, white people have a lot of business to do in the next 25 years. We have a lot of things to do. We've caused a lot of this pain, and I apologize to you for this. This is not something that you should ever have to go through, or any mother needs to go through this. This is just it's the pain. How can a child even concentrate on lessons in school when something minor happens at home, let alone something like this, when a brother or an uncle or a grandfather or a dad is unjustly treated. The only thing that I can do as a person, not the only thing, I do a lot of things, but when Sean was executed, he wasn't murdered, he was
Yes.
executed through the window of a pickup truck, an unmarked pickup truck in Vallejo. And he was murdered by someone who is an executioner, because this man, Jared Tan in Vallejo, has been doing this for years. It's his fifth one. What you just said, Miss Woods, is so true. I mean, these folks, they turn their badges down every time they murder another Black or brown person. It's like a badge of honor for them.
Yes.
I mean, to me, when I learned, I mean, I had no idea after Sean was murdered for so-called maybe looting a Walgreens. We don't even know. He didn't even have a chance to say what he was doing there. He was outside on his knees with his hands in the air, and then they executed him. So we don't know the whole story. We don't know. We don't know. And if he was looting a Walgreens, oh my gosh, boy, oh, those the Tylenol or the Pampers that somebody takes. It's not, you don't execute somebody for that. That is just so ridiculous. But we don't even know anything about what happened that night. But we do know the Vallejo Police Department executed a young man who had a whole life ahead of him, 22 years old. Same, just outrageous. So this is like it's a national disease. It's a national pandemic disease of racism. And it's super, super affecting so many folks. And white people need to stand up and do something about it. And we can't let you do it by yourself. We can't let you carry all this burden on your shoulders, Miss Woods, because it's just not right. It's not fair. It's not just. And our stories need to go out there, and we need to hook up with others and become the redwood trees that we are. The redwood trees have shallow roots, but the way that they survive is that they hang on to each other. So they grab onto each other's roots and they hang on in the winds and in the storms, and they don't blow over very easily. Even though they could, if they're standing by themselves, they get blown over in a storm because they don't have everybody else to hang on to. So this network that is being created and has been created for a long time is super important to keep on building, so that we don't fall down when things happen, and that we can uplift each other when things get tough. And you have lots of people surrounding you with lots of love, Miss Woods. The Monterossa family, I've known them for over 25 years. I've lived on this block for about 30 years in Bernal Heights, Southern Bernal Heights, off of Mission Street. We're down the street from the J. Sarah Elementary School, where Sean and Michelle and Ashley walked up our block every single, passed by our house for that many years to go to elementary school there. They took care of each other. Michelle's the oldest, Sean was the middle, and Ashley's the baby. And my son and my daughter grew up here as well. And while in high school, my son and Michelle got together, and they've been together for about 7 years now. And I've been friends with Neftali and Lauda for that many years as well, and we're very close. And when Sean was taken, it was like all of us took a bullet as well.
Yes.
Not as many as he took, but and not as many as your son took. But it was a shot through a community of all kinds of people that really loved Sean and also are starting to become conscious of the police brutality that's happening all around. We also supported Chesa Boudin. We were supporters and we canvassed for Chesa. And we all went to his big party over at El Rio Bar on Mission Street, and Michelle and my daughter, my son, and Ashley, and we all went there and congratulated him. And we were so excited that we finally got a DA and got Gascon out of here. So we've seen Gascon, and we didn't think that he was that impressive. He was not someone that we needed to have here. So I feel sorry for my friends in Los Angeles, really.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Sean, you know, hardworking young kid, great kid. He and I shared a love of books. He just loved talking to me about what he was reading. And I'm a big lowrider fan. I love lowrider cars. And I had a 72 Le Mans when I drove out to California, my 72 Le Mans. I had to sell it to buy books for go to college, which makes me feel sad. I had to sell it for that. But no one can steal your knowledge, and no one can steal your brain power. So a car is just a car. Yes. And that's what I tell my students all the time, is that when you knowledge up, and that term knowledge up was first said at the first rally we had after Sean was murdered on Mission and 24th Street. We had a rally there, and I'm going to share my screen and I'll show you some photographs real quick from that. And let me just put that on for you. Let me just do this for us so you can see some of the pictures, because the pictures tell more of the story. Yeah, I can tell. And so when you know, the first couple of days after Sean was executed, our backyard became the media hub for Ashley and Michelle. And our garage became a billboard of information, and people needing to knowledge up. But the first rally we went to, one of Sean's mentors at Horizons Inc. mentioned that Sean was knowledging up, that he was becoming conscious of so many things. And he had just finished having a class at City College with his sister Michelle called Latina Voces de las Latinas. And he started to really understand being what a Latino meant to him, and the struggles of 400 years of occupation in the Americas. And he started to become way more conscious. So he was really knowledging up, really exciting. And so our backyard became like media central. You know, every day 2 and 3 interviews were going on. And this is during a pandemic, and all the stress of the pandemic on top of this execution was just, you know, and at the first rally, this is my son and my daughter and I at that rally. And it was just like a bullet went through all of us. And when that woman said Sean was knowledging up, I was like, I'm a librarian. I can get books to young people. We can get social justice books. We can get the books that Sean loved, that he was learning to love. We can figure out how we can get free books to our kids. And at least in my neighborhood where I live, I'll get those going. Maybe it'll grow. I don't know. You know, you can only do so much when you're working full time, but the little bit that I can do, I'm going to do. And so we started a GoFundMe page. And these were some of the books that we've purchased so far and put into the Knowledge Up library. And we did, in July, we had a celebration of Sean's life on the block. We turned the whole block into a celebration of Sean's life, and asked people to donate some money for a mask. We made masks and said each donation would buy a book. And so that bought us some books, which we have now put into the library. The family, the Monterossa family, has joined other impacted families all over the United States. The sisters are becoming social justice warriors, and they're just being, you know, asked to, they're not here today because they're so impacted themselves. They would love to have been here. They're just overloaded. They can't even, they just have so many people trying to get at them all the time. So their mental health and their health of themselves is we're telling them just to take a break for the moment, because it's just too much for them. But we have joined with the Monterossa family and different different protests and different gatherings. This is one over in the Bayview where the families got together to talk to each other and have great speakers. And when my husband and I are walking around, we always, document what we see and what we are noticing in San Francisco. So right after Sean was executed, there were posters going up of "Long Live," Sean Monterossa, which is just so awful to see someone you love on a poster in the neighborhood. It's like, oh no, he's become a ghost boy, which is what Jewel Parker Rhodes, one of the books that we put into our school, into our library, is about like a Tamir Rice, Andy Lopez, who was playing with a toy gun. And it's a story for middle schoolers to understand the ramifications of a Black and brown kid playing with a toy gun at a park, that you could be murdered by the police. So that story actually is being read by our 7th graders at our middle school. We make our kids read that. And last year we had Oscar Grant's mom come and talk to the kids about what impacted families go through. So we do things like that at our school. And we have them read the book Ghost Boys, because once you're murdered, you become a ghost boy, with Emmett Till and with Tamir Rice and with Trayvon Martin. And so that's what Sean became, and Sean's there with Mario. And that book is a really important book for all of us to read. It's a middle school it's a middle school book, but it's very important for us to read as well. So up at the park near J. Sarah Elementary School became a place of mourning for the young people who loved Sean. It became a gathering place. The kids would roll up the smoker up the street and take the smoker up there and smoke different meats and bring food, and the young people were, mourning together. And then I would put this up around all the neighborhoods that I could walk in and ask people to donate money to the GoFundMe. And, it became a memorial, and it's still a place where young people go and hang out and be together and figure out what they're going to do. And then the library started to be built. My son and his good friend, they have a few power tools, and our garage became a madhouse of wonderfulness, of art and making and putting together the libraries. And we finally figured out how to put them together. It was a lot of work. It was I don't know how to make anything like this, and I don't know how to do construction, and to try to figure out how to post something on this metal wall and this metal fence, it took a little bit of help. And we finally got the library on Halloween, October 31st. Sean's 99-year-old grandmother cut the ribbon. And we opened up the libraries to the children and the adults in the neighborhood, and anybody can come here and take part of this. I mean, the beautifulness of it is blooming. It's going to blossom. It hasn't completely blossomed yet, but it's just so great to meet like Joyce here. I met her 2 weeks ago. She was there when we were up at the library, and she was so excited about seeing these books in the library. She's going to send these books that she got in this library to her nephews in Chicago, because they don't have books like this. Right. So there's such a potential, for us to spread this love. The only thing I can think of is that there's a saying in Spanish that you just don't know what you did to us. What you really did was you planted seeds when you killed off our loved ones. There was a bunch of seeds scattered, and we're going to sprout, and we're not going to quit. And we're going to keep on sprouting goodness around us. So the terrorist police cannot stay. They cannot be growing, and they can't thrive. So we have to be the seeds to overpower them, like certain plants overpower other plants. And we have to do that as well. This is what it looked like this morning. So the blue one on the right-hand side over here is the one we usually put our high school level books. We put our elementary books here. And then the kids, the young people come and put up their stuff, and you never know what's going to come every single day. This one is for middle grade books. And this one is our funky box that Lucas and Isaac handmade. It's not totally perfect, but it was one that we made from scratch. And that's where we put the adult books and the used books, and and things like that. We had a whole group of magazines, radical magazines donated this morning, which was really nice to see. We go up and sweep it up every day and clean it. And we're going to take down all the paper signs in the near future. We're going to have an art day this weekend, either tomorrow or Monday with the youth, take down all the stuff that's going to get moldy from the rain. And then we're going to make beautiful signs that go in here in the fences so that folks know a little bit more about what books, we would like to have ordered, or, go to the local bookstores and buy some social justice books and put them in here. And there's a GoFundMe that the books will keep on getting. We want brand new books for kids. We don't want moldy books from people's garages up at this library. We don't want a bunch of 1970s books that you had in college. We want good books for kids that they want to read today. Jewel Parker Rhodes, actually, when I tweeted her out, she sent me a whole box of her books, including many copies of Ghost Boys. So her books are fantastic, and these authors need to be recognized, and I want to put their names up on the library so that people know that these are incredible authors that we should be supporting, because our Black and brown authors need to be supported. We're part of a diverse group of authors and librarians and illustrators that want to make sure our books are diverse, because the publishing industry is not diverse either. So we need to do that kind of thing. So I'm done with my story. That's my positive spin on tragedy, is that go out and do something with your anger and your grief, because we got to do more, because it's going to keep happening if we don't.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we open it up to questions, Gwen, do you have any comments or questions for Lisa?
Yeah, kudos. And I know the Monterossa sisters, beautiful young ladies, and they shared me remembering that day, December.
Yeah, this is the article.
Oh, and so I just adore those young ladies. And I'd say, first I want to pick and say this, Lisa, and to Sean's family, is that one thing I know is that they're so uncomfortable with the names of our loved ones, and we cannot let them not hear those names and see their faces, because they get comfortable. And it's like they forgot. I remember when the attorney that represented Mario said he couldn't win this case even in court with a video. And it was the worst. It was what I call my Judas moment. And I think this is where I debate with Bibles now, because I think there's two terms of how Judas killed himself, hung himself, or threw himself off a cliff. And in that moment, I thought, how do I do it? Should I jump off a cliff or hang myself? But it's that bad. It was, and it still is that bad. But I was working at Cover California at the time, and went back to work. And I'm sitting there tuning out, and you hear all these other stories, people calling to get this insurance. But I get a call from this attorney, and something regarding TMZ and Colin. And because I knew once I took the settlement, before I even got home, they had already had me plastered on the Examiner saying that I was relieved. I wanted the world to know, was never relieved. But this was without my consent. So even before I got home, Mario's siblings got the news. They didn't even give me the courtesy or the decency or the respect of saying, we're going to report this to the Examiner. So I'm still in my feelings about that. Let me tell you, it's such a disrespect there. And my oldest son called and said, you settled this case. And so they didn't even leave me that. To me, it's a sense of, and I want them to know, it was another insult to injury. And so I think when I'm in this very depressed, very tragic state in my own head, and then someone from TMZ said, please give us a call back. And regarding what Colin said regarding Mario, it was the reason he decided to take the knee. When that moment, Colin gave me life, and we did these short essays on his tweet of abolishing a system, and in that moment, I knew that the city knew here where you thought you got rid of Mario. You executed, his blood is now sinking into the pavement, the cracks of the street. He's gone, but he was now resurrected again. Now he's back in your ear and back in your face. And in that moment, I knew I could hear him say, keep fighting, Ma.
Mhm.
I'm going to make them be so uncomfortable as
Mhm.
every day, as I'm uncomfortable and I can't sleep at night,
Mhm.
when I have to walk the floors, when I miss my child badly.
Yep.
I want them to be this uncomfortable, this broken. So in that moment, I think we, that gave ground to know this is a city nationwide. They want these names to settle in, forget. We can't let them forget. It'd be like forgetting the Holocaust.
That's
We
what the
can't.
Monterossa sisters are doing too. Like they
Yeah,
can't go to college right now. They can't concentrate on classes. They can't get an
no,
education right now
as I
because
said,
they can't let people forget their brother's
everything in
name
their
right now.
DNA is changing.
Mhm.
Everything.
Yeah.
I never was a person to have hate.
Mhm.
Never. But I have anger and rage and hate for a system that said my child was not worthy enough to be apprehended and taken into account. And I'm glad you said, Lisa, regarding you don't have to be perfect,
Mhm.
because what they don't know is the truth about these young men.
Mhm.
May not have been perfect, but they're beautiful souls. My son would never call you out of his name. He really would not.
Mhm.
And so we shouldn't have to, hey, explain, yeah, he wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve that execution.
Right.
And I think you said something else regarding taking these officers out of school. Yes, because let me tell you what that mirror. That mirrors that when they put officers into school, it was a setup connected to the pipeline to prison industry. They're getting our kids, even in elementary, they're starting to get our kids prepared to go into the prison industry. It's the new slavery.
Mhm.
It's the new slavery. If you haven't seen this movie called 13, you
Mhm.
have to, because all the big businesses
Mhm.
that put money in the prison industry to keep it going. It was odd. Me and Mario had a conversation years ago, and he said, I think the whole system should be under federal. And I said, Mario, that's not going to happen, because you know why? That's too much money they're going to lose.
Mhm.
But now I'm willing to look. And when I did these short essays with Colin Kaepernick, and there's about abolishing a system, my part was to tell his truth, yes. And then we talked about, what does abolishing of a system look like? Well, I would start with juries of our peers. Don't let them be outside of this, because let's look at this system where the juries of one peer. If I worked for Bayer, California, and I had to serve jury duty, the most they would pay me was up to 2 weeks. And that trial could take up to 6 months. So I couldn't serve. So I was out. It's usually the city employees that can do it. But isn't that kind of a conflict of interest? You work for the city, a city that governs you and pays you. So you're going to be more on their side.
Mhm.
So we have to find a system that says pay everyone for the amount of time. If you want to see a jury of one, and it has to come out of that person's community. That jury has to come out of where, listen, but we understand the struggles. I can't tell you how many young folks out of my community has been impacted by so much abuses. And then we can't go back and talk about what impacted the Black and brown community when we talk about the Reaganomics and that Reagan era. That hit my community harsh. But I go back to say this, I'm proud of you, because that's very important, getting them out of school, because that was part of the pipeline to prison. That is part of the pipeline to prison industry. Let's get them all set up. And it's like, again, our young men and women are judged totally different.
Mhm.
We got this new bail thing come out. It's a little too late for a lot of brothers that still have been doing this time. I know brothers that's still trying to get, and they have done the hard work and done 30 years behind prison, but have done the hard work. Again, if a white boy can go in and rape a white girl in broad daylight and the judge says, listen, I do not want to ruin your future here, 6 months, but you barely do 3. We got to ask ourselves, there is a problem here. And we have to hold everybody. And in these offices, someone called me regarding Gascon and my opinion on him being D of LA. LA was kind of screwed. They are. And I'm with you. They are screwed. But the only thing I could say is hold his feet to the fire and make him do, because he literally was ran out of San Francisco. Lionheart, Big Rick, thank you very much. But I think it comes down to keep them alive, keep their names out there, keep this terrorist group uncomfortable, because you can do these insults and injuries and you can keep moving on with your life. But a lot of us are stuck, and you should be stuck too. And until there is some justices to this, we have to live our life now with this. Listen, I'm never going to be at peace with this until my dying day, unless these cops are held accountable. And so I want to commend you on that, dealing with that get them out there, because that works hand in hand with the pipeline to prison industry. There's just so many things that have affected us and we have to deal with. So Lisa, kudos, give the Monterossa family, tell them thank you. I love them always. And they're my prayers.
They love you too. And it's just tragic that they can't, I mean, they really can't be young women that they wanted to be before. But they're very proud of the work they're doing, and they are supporting you, and they will be with you as well. Different times it will intersect. They're just overwhelmed. And I only live a couple houses away from them, and I don't see them very often. Even
I think you just always have to keep the name in the universe. And I think I heard that what they live. I think it was Morgan Freeman, and he was doing a documentary, and he had said, listen, they live every time someone mentions their names. And I adapted to that. And so as long as you keeping Sean name lifted, he lives, keep it in their ear. You're not going to be comfortable with this. I'm not going to let you be comfortable with this.
Yes, and the young people have done a campaign to keep a billboard right outside the police department in Vallejo. So they keep there's a GoFundMe to keep I think they've expanded it to 2 or 3 billboards in Vallejo to keep the police uncomfortable. So that's something, and to keep the community knowing that they're not going to give up, that they're not going to, give up. And they've also, I mean, they've also done lots of great work with the other families in Vallejo as well.
Kudos.
So yeah, we just have to be like the redwood trees, just grab onto each other's roots and hang on and thrive and keep on growing and not let them knock us down. There's just no way we can do it. And I think the next thing we're going to do is we're trying to find somebody in the Bayview to take on another library so we can get a free library going there. We have one built. We need to have a caretaker of it.
Yeah.
Great. So now we'll open it up to questions from everyone else. You can put them in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to speak it. Do you have a link, Lisa, maybe to that GoFundMe you'd mentioned for the billboard?
Yeah, I'll put it in again.
And we'll put it
in really early. Yeah, I'll put it in again. Sure, definitely. Yeah, we're also doing a campaign with the local bookstores, keeping the bookstores, fed some bucks to keep them going so they don't die out. So that if you want to buy a social justice book to put in the Knowledge Up library, you can also do it that way. But we purchase from the local bookstores here in San Francisco who support this type of work.
Magic?
I just want to thank both of you. I was not aware of the Sean Monterossa Library. I'm going to make a donation after this, and I will share the donation link to DSA Justice to get more donations. This is absolutely wonderful. I love the phrase knowledge up. I also wanted to thank Gwen for indefatigable commitment and her powerful voice, and also that it's so true that once you're put that uniform on, you're blue. That's it. And it's a powerful statement and way of phrasing it. So thank you both so much. And I just want to thank you for mentioning Andy Lopez, because nobody ever mentions him. I don't know why, but I worked on that for 4 years. And we're still trying to get justice for him, the 13-year-old young man who was shot in Santa Rosa. By the way, on the anniversary, October 22nd, of Police Brutality Day, I almost feel like that sheriff was going to go out and show the activists what he was going to do, frankly. So, you know, that sheriff got a promotion and full retirement and never had to face anything. So thank you for mentioning him, because I know his family and the other activists, and he too often is left out. So thank you both so much for what you're doing.
And Magic, I have to say to that, because that's concerning right there. There's so many names, so much blood. We can't even put them all, you know, it's we really have to now write them down in ledgers. And so I think it is called for that. If some name is missed, you know, bring it up. Please bring, because I think they lived through that. That brings power back to them. And so thank you, Magic, because there's so many that we can, and that should be concerning to everyone nationwide, that it should be so concerning that we can't even get all the names. You know, I think the young man, Anthony Nunes too, and yeah, there's so many. I mean, this is so disturbing. It's gotta be disturbing. If it doesn't disturb you, then something's wrong. And I think it's as wrong as what those officers that get up every morning and feel like, listen, Black, brown, and purple, your life don't matter. And so rest in power, Andy Lopez, and thank you, Magic, because I think it is important. We have to bring, hey, if you hear a name has not been mentioned, and I hope before we leave, we can say, oh, we can remember all the names, Oscar Grant, and you know, and all these names, and Alan Buford, and all these young souls. Lisa, I'm glad you didn't have to explain. My child, he didn't have to be perfect, but he didn't deserve an execution. So I digress, you guys. Sorry.
Dolores, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question, but first I want to thank both Gwen and Lisa and Magic also for their very moving testimonies. I think more people should hear it. Thank you so much. My question is kind of a practical one. Is there a list of any of the officers that were involved in those prior killings? I mean, where does it stand now? I have never seen a list of who can't, maybe they can't be prosecuted anymore, or I mean, where would I, if you could, not that someone here has all that information, but where could somebody look to see the police that are still working and that were involved in these cases, and who was prosecuted, and was like, is the time past that they can be prosecuted? I'm just interested in the sort of guts of this.
Okay. Thanks, Dolores, for asking that, because I don't think there is a time press, because I know Chesa is looking into Mario's case regarding those officers. None again on San Francisco's watching till Chesa stepped up and start pressing these charges against these 2 officers so far. And so I wasn't aware either that I thought once you settled out, there's no recourse, but there is recourse. So my prayers that they'll go after, because these officers in Mario's case, because they came into San Francisco now with pending investigations. Where with pending investigation are you allowed to work anywhere? If something's pending, you have to wait for the decision to come down. And they came out of Stockton and Antioch with a history of excessive forces and brutality. And so, and I think the city now is going that they won't hire officers in with those, with that history. But again, for a lot of us, it's a little too late when you guys dropped the ball way back here, because I always say the Black and brown community knew about the San Francisco police force. There was what they called the Starsky and Hutch days, where I really feel like they watched too many sitcoms, get up and go into your community, and this is, they really live in their own their reality. But I do think only until for San Francisco, you're going to see charges. You've seen Chesa stand up to press charges for 2 of the officers. I do, but remember that it's easier with rookies. They haven't put the time in. We need to get seasoned officers, the ones that have this history, this long going history. We need to see that. And I think, again, it's nationwide. It's San Francisco, it's Oakland, it's Vallejo, it's Richmond. This is again, a terrorist group defined that and when they gear up with the same mindset. And so I'm hoping that this takes precedence where he stood up and said, and I hope a lot of district attorney, because you're seeing it in other cities now. Way before San Francisco was supposed to be the most progressive city, where the officers have been charged. And only into Chester have you seen it for San Francisco. And so, and if there's a history, I think there was a bill passed, I don't know, maybe Magic, or at least you can say the bill passed where you can find, now we can look at the history of these officers now. SB 14 is SB 14. Now you can now look at the history of the office. They always come up with our history. And as a mother of a Black child, I knew, again, before grieving, I couldn't even grieve first. I knew I'm going to have to gear up and fight. Because I'm going to have to let you know that, listen, they're going to make him sound so intimidating, so hard. So he wasn't that. It was a fight on the block with another young man. And even the alleged victim had tried to explain to me what happened that day. And it was just, it shouldn't have went there. And it went there because the policing and the mindset and the ill training, because off of Mario's blood, now y'all want, because Joey Bab said that video that they show when they train now is the video of Mario. What goes wrong and how it goes totally, completely wrong, because you're poorly trained. And then you adapt again. I always feel it's mostly you adapt into this climate and culture. You can go into the Black community, brown communities, and you can do these assaults and these annihilations. Nobody cares, and they adapt to it. Even if you look like me, you adapted to this policy. Because I know some Black folks listen, in their own head, they even load their own image of who they are and their Blackness. And that's just the truth. If they just even don't even like their own skin color, and they put on that uniform, so they adapt and assimilate into that climate and that culture. But Dolores, I'm glad you asked it, because I think now it is on the book. And I think it was Nancy Skimmer that actually helped push that forward. Then now we can look at your history now. You can go and dissect my history. I should be able to dissect your history. And if you're coming on to my police department with a history of brutalities and pending investigation, that don't make sense to me. It just don't. I will say this too, and I always want to mention Paul Henderson, who is now on the police commission, on September 10th, 2020, he put out an examiner, and I think he just he's kind of trying to shield these police now. And shame on you, Paul Henderson. Because
Gwen, just to be clear, Paul Henderson is actually the the executive director of the Office of Police Accountability. He is at all of the police commission meetings.
Okay.
And yes, he has accomplished virtually nothing.
Thanks, Magic. I appreciate, because I said, listen, he said Mario was executed by a policy. I'm tired of them taking these jargons and just putting them any way they want to. With that beautiful young lady, Breonna Taylor, you know, they said she was a victim, she was a soft target. They always come up with these jargons for us of why you're just so inhumane. There was no humanity there when it came to Mario. He wasn't a victim of a policy. He was a victim of 5 brutal officers that surrounded him, had no empathy or compassion, and didn't deem that he was fit to be taken into custody. It just get him off the street and let's just annihilate him.
And also, all 5 of those cops were trained in crisis intervention. So it shows what a failure that program is.
Wow. Thanks, Magic. I didn't even know that. I just thought it was poorly trained, but I didn't even see the poorly trained there. I just thought I saw a mindset. Listen, we just to getting him out the way. He's a problem. Let's just get him out the way. And so you can say to Paul Henderson, for me, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. You're pretty much setting up because you're no chaser. The way I feel is they felt some type of way when Chaser did, and bless his soul, he dismantled that system. You can't build a new system off an old system that has never worked. You have to dismantle, and that's what Chaser did. And so kudos. And I hope he can stand firm and stand in his truth and stand in our truth and stand in the right of a wrong. Listen, you got to start righting these wrongs that they've been doing to us. So thank you, Magic, because when he said Mario was killed by this, and I think a narrative is everything.
That's
I don't
right.
say kill or murder because it's kinder when you go into court. You lie on the autopsy. They said my child was 6'9", 169 pounds. No, he was 6'4", he was 5'4", 144 pounds wet. And so that's if you go into court, he'll seem more intimidating, you know? And so I think that jargon's like, you're just trying to cover wrong. And so I'm looking at Paul Henderson definitely with a side eye here. I'm not pleased with that at all, you know. So you just honestly, because your complicity of you saying that says now you're trying to cover for these officers. When I saw my child surrounded by that, I saw there was no compassion. There was going to be no understanding. Mario was not, they meant for him not to walk out of that. And I said, with all his body took, the beanbag, there was another weapon that they used on him. His body was so in shock. It's like me punching you in the face 20 times. You're not going to be able to think straight. And it just comes down to, y'all saw him as nothing or nobody, you know. You wouldn't have did a dog the way they did Mario or any of these beautiful souls that, listen, if it's not on video, I'm gonna tell you, you have to question it. Don't trust what they tell you.
Yep.
I just wanted to say something in talking about what you all been mentioning, and Magic mentioned the October 22nd, and for years there was a police brutality. There may still be October 22nd. I think it still is Day of Against Police Murder and Brutality. But anyway, this book was put out in 1999, and it has 2,000 names of people killed by the police, and that was only a partial list.
I can't see the title. What is it?
It's called Stolen Lives.
Oh, thank you.
Killed by law enforcement. And there's about 20 pages from the Bay Area in here, by the way. Wow. All kinds of names. Some of which I knew years ago, but I've forgotten. Anyway.
Bruce, let me piggyback off of you when you bring that up, because I think it was the Post or the Times that really initiated getting some type of statistics of how many lives are lost at the hands of police officers. And I think the federal government came in and said, we'll do one, but it's not required that a city gives them that information. Isn't that kind of backwards? It's like, it should be required, because I think if it's not required, it's really an epidemic when you think about it. It's an epidemic. So all epidemics need to have some kind of control on it. but you don't want to keep the statistics because you don't want to make it sound like it's an epidemic, but it's an epidemic, what they are doing nationwide.
Great, thank you.
Just to emphasize that, there were, well, the article that I read about Mario, 906 people were shot by the police in 2015. 228 were Black men. Anyway, yeah. And there's at least 1,000 every year.
Yes, that's not epidemic. Or if they're sitting in these high political seats and don't feel like there's a concern here, then that speaks to, and I say that to Paul, and that speaks to the core of who you are as an individual. Because at some point I have to look at something and recognize it for all the inhumanities that it is. And so, yeah, I'm bothered with that.
I'd just like to mention that I saw a video the other day, Baltimore's beautiful struggle, and they're really trying to show how we have to be aware that police are not solved on the federal level. It's all local and state. And so it's very important to keep the focus there and not get lost in that. But I put it in the chat, LBS Baltimore, and the head of this is genius in his analysis of how we need to create alternatives within our neighborhoods. So I just highly recommend. I just found out about this movement in Baltimore, and it's very exciting.
I would just like to say that as one practical thing that we might do is, Chesa Boudin, as far as I know, is the only district attorney in the history of San Francisco that's ever brought any charges against any police for any brutality or murder. I think that may be true.
Well, actually, 48 Hills, Kim Redmond did find one in the 60s, apparently. But now he is, by the way, he's made 3 charges now.
He's made 3 charges.
And he said there's more.
It just seems to me that one practical thing that we could do is say, as the Unitarian Church, for example, is send a letter and to Boudin, congratulating him for doing that, but also make it public and say that we support what he's doing. So church comes out publicly and says, this is what's got to be done.
Bruce, I talked to Chess about how we could support him, and he said op-eds and social media and press conferences. So thank you for thinking of that, because sometimes the left gets so absolutist about having to be abolitionist and all of this that they can't support someone who's doing the best they can to work within the system. It's okay if you're out of it and you hold those extremes, but anybody that's doing the right thing, we need to support them. And I am so proud of Chesa and the background he came from and what he's doing. So thank you, Bruce, because we need to give him our backing, because there's so many people. If you go on Nextdoor, there are so many haters of Chesa right now. I try to counteract that on there, but Nextdoor is a vigilante mess.
Mm-hmm. So we have a number of questions in the chat. So if you'd like to ask a question, please add it. We have some questions for Gwen. Is there a group that people could connect with? And is there a documentary about Mario if people are looking to knowledge up?
Right now, it's just so in limbo, and I think who's kind of been a really loud voice is the F12 Equipto. Been loud, never forgot his name and all that it represented. Haven't put anything together because I've been talking with people of understanding struggle of what our struggle was as a family. And it just seems like, this was just our life. When we came back from Houston, my mom had terminal cancer. His dad abandoned the family, became estranged, and sold the house in Houston. So we were in here. The environment was a little harsher than when I knew I always had to fight in the Bayview. Always had to fight, But when he grew up, it was just, when we came back, it was even harsher. But I think he did a beautiful short film, Bayview Then and Now. It's interesting. And I'll try and get that information, because if you can see it, you get kind of who he was, so I'm still kind of working those things out. It's just been it's it's what Lisa said, it's an everyday struggle. I do think the immunity, that quality immunity that
Mhm.
protects them, it's like the police bill of rights that protects them. They can just say certain words and then they get this slow slap on the hand. I'm in fear of my life. He was a threat. They use certain jargons, and that's why I say it's important for us to keep using our jargon, as harsh as it is, for them to know, listen, what you do is not kill or murder. What you do is, you execute and annihilate. And but yeah, I'm still kind of working those things out. A lot of things kind of transpired, which kind of kept me from really delving in on. It's always important for me to tell who Mario was, because he really was this beautiful, beautiful soul. He really was. I remember we had a conversation and he was telling me about, he asked me about what did I think about Stalin. And I thought, Mario, the dictator. And he was like, yeah, that guy. And, and that was him. And I said, well, I don't think much, but he said, well, he felt like in reading, because he read a lot, and reading some things that he felt that a man that didn't contribute to society should take himself out or be off. And I said, Mar, nah, that's God's judgment there. That's up to God to make those things, because nobody can make that determination. I don't know where your road is going. When you find these things straight from these teenage, pre-teenage years, it's going to make so much sense. And even at this age, I remember telling them, at my age, it does, a lot of things doesn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
But you'll see things different from this stage, from 15 to 20, then they'll change from 20 to 25, then from 25, so it's all these. But I remember you had to smile like, yeah, thanks for saying that. Because I think, you think in all your knucklehead years, do I deserve to not be here? No. But those officers made that choice for him. And here's then where I have to rely on faith. Well, whatever I have to go through, Lord, I hope those officers have to go through. And then when I say about how everything about us changes, the core of our DNA changes. I never was a hateful person, but I have hate and rage in me now. So this is what they do to us as families. We're kind of this definition. I'm not insane, but I make it look good. You get up and you do what you have to do. There's the moments of, you're broken, but you have to pick it back up and go out and fight, because I think, again, it goes down to, I got to make sure that name stays in their ears. Don't ever get comfortable that, you did this dirty deed and it's going away. And I think that's important. And it's important that we keep the names of all these in their ear. I want you to be uncomfortable, because now our lives are so uncomfortable. And so I think, I'm still working out those little details. It's been a long road, and I'm with Lisa on that. There's sometimes you have to sit back and reflect on it, and you have to regroup, and you have to redefine your life. So I haven't been able to put the energy into putting Mario's life together. I know when I say to you who he is, it's always important for me to explain who he was. And he was this beautiful soul. And I remember after I did 14 years of Baja California Patrol, and they forced me to resign. And I remember going home and I was in my feelings, and I thought, now how am I supposed to reinvent myself at this age? And I remember him looking at me, he's like, Mom, you're gonna be okay, gray hair and all. And those are the things I miss about him. And that's the stuff you take. He was my sons were the reason after I buried my mom and my sister, and, and you lose jobs and you get this, and husbands leave you. You are left with this family that gives you every reason to get up in the morning and go to work and try and make life work. And when they did that, and I thought, I did everything. I thought I was a daughter who took care of her mother when her mother was dying. I was a wife whose husband abandoned her. I paid my taxes. I did all these things. And for this one thing to happen, let my child have a pass on this one. And I can't be okay with that one.
We
That
hear
was,
you, Gwen. We hear you.
yeah.
You know, I'm proud of you that you're owning your anger. So many people are told, just forgive. Forgiveness may come later, but you know, anger is what gives us the power to fight. And I also appreciate that you put it towards the system. Gwen, you have been so strong all these years. I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you guys, because I think for you guys to hear and understand more, because they wanted to get out and make it seem a fight on the block, he, should never have ended that way. And if you just didn't have the two types of policing and saw my son as a human, as opposed to an animal, a Negro, someone that wasn't deemed fit to live, you would have did the same thing you did to Dylan Roof, Brock Turner. You would have did the same thing, and you didn't. And you took, it was my joy away. So I fight now for, there won't ever be peace. And my doctor asked me, what will it take for you? There'll never be peace unless somebody is accountable for this. So if I don't get anyone accountable, I'll live the rest of my life in this place.
And thanks for sharing. We maybe we should all just take a pause for a moment.
We're holding you, Gwen.
Yeah.
We love you, Gwen.
Thank you, Gwen, for your truth and your power and your love, because it's going to spread, and it is spreading.
Thanks all.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a comment from Magic about the Baltimore Police Department. In terms of holding these departments accountable, kind of piggybacking off Baltimore, there's a book published recently, I'm blanking on the title, but it essentially documents something similar to the LA County Sheriff's Department, where there were multiple criminal entities with, like, the police department, in my opinion, is a criminal entity, but they had multiple gangs within the department stealing drugs from one neighborhood, selling them to another, and arresting everyone in between, and then threatening anyone who reported it, and they actually killed another officer. And there was enough evidence of that they finally got prosecuted. But this was going on for like 15 something years. And similar to what Lisa had mentioned with Vallejo, taking points for shooting people, flipping down their pins, it's happening all over the country. The entire country, these departments are corrupt. Not only are they murdering people and executing people, they're skimming off the top, extra overtime, getting their pensions, and they're stealing from people and then buying their boats and their houses. And then anytime anyone says to them, look at what you're doing, they cry foul and they're being bullied, and it's outrageous. Let me go down. There's been a lot of comments. Let me sort of just gather. There's a comment, even Obama showed how out of touch the top is when he said defund was the wrong messaging. There's someone asked if we can draft a statement, maybe a letter to the op-ed supporting CHASA, and maybe bring up some of what we've talked about. I think that is a good idea, and I think it's important for us, as we have to take action. We have to keep taking action, and if we've already taken action, we have to keep doing it, and we can't forget. So I think that's a great idea. Maybe after this, we can email everyone on this group about that.
And I think it is important that Chase knows there's this support, because he is in a so uncomfortable place. He really is like on enemy ground right now, because he is pushing against the grain. And Gascon and all them fell into place. But he's he's standing firm, and but he's standing against the big machine, and it can be very discouraging because we know the entities that he's going against for the right now, not for the right of just do something right. It's kind of, even I remember saying to Gascon at a meeting, we're just asking you to throw us a bone, and he couldn't even throw us a bone regarding, making a charge. And so I do agree that it's going to be so important that we support him and show him, listen, you're not out there by yourself. He dismantled a whole department. And there's a lot of people that's hating that right now. He went in, we knew in the San Francisco crime lab, they were taking drugs out and selling them. We knew, our community knew for years they've been taking drugs and selling them. And even with the gun issues of how guns get into our thing, there was days of Starsky and Hutch, where there was 2 officers, and these years down the road up until now, the same behavior. So I Chase It For Me represents, we are going to change these behaviors, and it has to start by getting rid of some of this, some of the cesspool that's been, because that's what it is. And now I'm just hoping that we can get seasoned officers gone, because if you think, again, I'm going to bring a Kenneth Hardy, the officer that you can fire him, but they're going to go to another police department. He went to Alameda County and then got into what he called a relationship with a teenage young man, but and that shows you how messed up it is. And then he gets fired. And Tamir Rice, if you would look closer in their records, they look closer in the records and realize this officer lied on his police application. And then now you can fire him. But again, for Tamir's mother and family, it's a little too late after the fact. If we start looking early enough, stop letting our uncles and friends and cousins join the force, because you got pulled here, that's got to stop, and it has to be, someone mentioned that, even when we talk about these progressive folks, if you talk about Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, and saying defunding him, you're not even looking at what we're talking about, because sometimes it has to be that drastic. Yes, defund them, because right now, as far as the Black and brown community, they're terrorists. But to him, they may be your hero because you have enough money that they will provide safety for you. But given the day, if they don't know who you are and you're driving in a car and you Black, they can still pull you out and shoot you at the end of the day. So that's what they're built on. But I do agree that support for Chase is it's vital, because everybody needs to know that, listen, you got support here. It's on the voting end, because we did in San Francisco, we did a great thing when it came down to changing that system. All the money behind, this, I forget her name, so forgive me all, that they put behind her, the POA, the endorsements from the mayor. She didn't win because they sent a strong message. We have to make it, something's got to change here. Something's got to change. And still, they're not going to understand unless it's voting. You'll understand if the voters come together and say, because we can vote you in or we can vote you out. That's going to be so detrimental. They feel like the Black vote, it didn't count because we're smaller in numbers in San Francisco. But if we can stay large in numbers and know what the mission is. Someone said all these groups that break apart, but listen, everybody has a way of doing something and getting to, we all have the same mission in common, and that is justice and being fair and partial. We all need that. We Black and brown communities need it so much, because we've been so negated from it. And so not to have hope, and I fight daily on to having this hope. Hope for what? It was hard for me this election year, because guess why? It was my child was executed under a progressive watch, and we have progressive people to speak on it. They did not. And I think, Bruce, we had a conversation a while back when you and Ruth, we had lunch, and you were mentioning there was you hadn't voted in so many years. And I found it interesting. The reason that you wanted to vote now was, then there was a reason, you know, that guy that was in office. And there was a reason that I was debating everything, because everything I voted for was the thing that failed my child. And so, yeah, I think it's very important if we just can kind of let him know, you got the people's voice behind you. And I find it when I hear in that image of we the people, it means everything. I never thought about it much until now. We the people. It is such a strong statement.
Gwen, will you mention Mothers on the March and tell us about that?
What was I at the Mothers in the March?
Well, I mean, it's every Friday, right? That they're at the POA.
No, that was a while because I couldn't show up because I was working at Covered California then. And I
It's
think
still
now it's
happening.
yeah, it's still, I
That's
think
Mama Christina's
it was
group.
Christina, right?
Yeah,
And
I
I
think they're
think
still
it
doing.
formed, yeah, it's been years in the making now, because right after Mar, because I remember being so it's been close, it's been over 4 years, I think.
Gwen, I
And
think they're still doing it. They're still doing it because I saw them over there next to 850 Bryant in the alley, and they do it every Friday still.
so
There's
that goes back to,
There's a new group of young people doing it.
so you know what that goes back to, Magic, is that's one of those reasons you keep, that keeps the names in their ears, where they think it goes away. It doesn't go away. There, you know, everybody has this place to have to be in. And so if they're still there at 850 Bryant, that means, guess what? You're still going to have to see these names that you're responsible for. And so I think I always thought in terms of, I was more, I think, in your face kind of. I remember I was listening to someone say, I just think things should be so in your face, so blatant. And I think they get used to walking past you with their cup of coffee, going to their office, and it's fine. I think things have to be so ugly and in their face. I was reading something where it said that if someone committed a crime and took a life, and I think this is biblically, and I think it was T.D. Jakes that actually I heard this from, that person that took that life should carry that person's body around their neck or on their shoulders until the stench seeps into their pores. And I thought, well, that would be fabulous. That would be fabulous if I could, I could, you know, have more, you know, all the blood, you know, just that would, to me, that's kind of in your face, you know, if we could, you know, just put blood in front of that, because they're comfortable. Signs and stuff is comfortable, and you get used to it. And that's what I said when the settlement happened, they just knew it was going to go away. And it to me, it was kind of an act of God when Colin then stood up and said something, because then I said in my own mind, it's like, okay, you're hearing about Mario again today, because I think they are so, they get comfortable and they want the names to go away, because you cannot, unless I did see Beast though, when that's surrounded Mario. So be honest, I don't know what a man is made of. I just think, you know, it's a system that it excuses, and you can call it policies and soft targets and that, but literally, guess what? It's just, you have these men on these forces and they are exempt from any humanity. And that's the bottom line, unless you are of a different persuasion. When it comes again to black and brown folk, we don't have to take you into custody. In fact, we're gonna get rid of you right here, right now. There's no future for you. It's all of that. So I think it is important that those groups stay there and keep them, because they're still going to be bothered by it. You think this name is going, it's not going anywhere. all the insults and atrocities, it's not going, and we're not going to let you forget. I think that's so important. You will not forget. And I think, again, as we spoke earlier, when you say their names, they live. And I thought that was one of the best things. I think it was Morgan Freeman said that. Every time you speak their name into the universe, they live, they resurrect. And so I do like that ideal. So I think what Miss Christina and them are doing, and that's a soldier for you. As a person that didn't fall out by the wayside, I'm still, that's when you know what a man's intent was right there. It was to do this, make this entity here uncomfortable, and she is fast on that. And you have to commend that. You know, everybody has different ways of approaching something or doing something, but if what I said to you is this is how I go about something, and we may not agree, but that's that person's way of doing it. And kudos to Miss Christina, because that is, you know, that is a soldier right there. That is a soldier that has, no matter what, who has fallen by the wayside, she's there. She's doing it, you know. And it goes back to, you may be smaller in number, but sometimes my dad taught me one time is that sometimes you don't want a large group of people. Sometimes you need a smaller group because you know that they got your back. They there, you know. Sometimes with larger groups, it's all this stuff, in-house bickering things getting away. And I do agree that I think everybody's way of getting to justice, some take the side way, the side street, the alley, the highway, the freeway, but our objective is to get to the same place, justice, and righting these wrongs. Again, my hope is now is that, and I'm glad you had mentioned that Chester said he's not done. I'm telling you, when I heard the first for Keita O'Neill, nobody said Keita. I never missed saying Keita O'Neill's name. None of these beautiful souls. I try to remember, imagine. That's why it's important that when you hear a name not being said, you got to speak that name. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, you know. And so, and then the second one is like, you know what? He's pushing against the grain, and it's going to be tough. But that shows you what a man is made of. And I saw Colin Kaepernick did that. And over money, that shows you the integrity of a man. Chaser just showed me the integrity of who he is. We have a lot of people we know that they lack integrity. But he proved to me, man, his integrity, man, kudos. And in order for him to stay there, we got to be with him. We got to support him. We got to support him. So I'm all in with the letter, you guys, definitely.
I just want to say just one thing real quick. I know Melvin's on this call and he hasn't said much, but another thing, I mean, you know, the council, what is the name of the council of churches here? The Interfaith Council. I mean, someone like an organization like that's got to take a stand. I really feel strongly about this. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a number of other issues like that come to mind, but I don't know, sometimes you got to push on people, you know. I mean, they're moral. The churches all come out and talk about how moral and morality and do all these, you know, these sermons and so on. But they gotta walk the walk as well as talk the talk, you know. And I think that, you know, we're in a moment right now, historically, where we have to push really hard, because I think this election has also opened up a pathway potentially. And I think we need to take advantage of it. But anyway, I just think that, you know, those of us who feel about social justice the way we talk about it need to,
Bruce, act on it. I'm sorry, Bruce, to cut you off. When it comes to the churches, and that's again, for me, everything about me has changed. I grew up, my father was a Baptist minister, and I grew up, you know, going to church and doing, but everything for me has transitioned now regarding that. Because I think the minister, and I know there's a church in San Francisco that I paid for 5 seats in, and this pastor did not even show up to preach Mario's funeral. And oddly enough, they have taken so much money from the city of San Francisco. So it's in conflict You know, you can't stand up for this thing. And I think it should have been even more preached from pulpits regarding slavery and all these things and these atrocities, and how the Bible have taught us to keep turning the other cheek, and it's okay. And you know, Mario is my Nat Turner moment, that I'm going to question everything now. You know, we're so caught up in judging people for this, when we should really be judging, why aren't we judging these officers for this? You know, I went to a that hometown meeting of Keith O'Neill. Literally, the pastor was preaching out the Bible, and he was protecting, you know, the chief of police. And he said, our children, pretty much, if you don't obey the laws of the land, lest you perish. So you're pretty much telling us Black mothers that because our sons did not obey the laws of the land, they perished. It was really an insult. And he couldn't even explain. I said, so what are you saying again about Dylan Roof and all these, you know, white males or European males that managed to get courtesies? And so I found that very insulting. I found that, you know, I supported that the Floyd George one that they had something from City Hall, and this particular pastor was there that I tithed at his church, and he went to speak on Colin Kaepernick, but never mentioned Mario. And he even tell the story about how Colin came to not take a knee. So again, another insult to injury. So you won't find me in a church building at all anymore. I'm more ready to read the Old Testament of, listen, when God told Joshua to pick up everything, walk that city, and walk it 7 times, take it down and destroy it. I want to hear more of that God. So I'm in that mindset. That now always turning that other cheek of saying, you know what, can I forget? No, I'm not in that place. And thank you, Magic, because I have to, I can't unless I get some resolve and some accountability of what they did to him. You know, I just see, you know, I brought this kid through my womb, and, you know, I knew what he smelled like when he came into this world. And I could only ask myself, you know, as he bled out on that street, and I could see his blood stain. And so when you said that, Bruce, yeah, it's if you haven't shaken hands with the devil enough and taken enough of the money, you know, and then, but you won't see a lot of that because these pastors have pretty much, you know, are in bed with the city. Let's just be honest. You're in bed with the city, and that's just what it is. And so, no, they will not stand up and say these things. And so we find ourselves and at this impasse of saying, you know what, you know what, everything that I thought I believed as far as you know, I'm no longer religion. My mother said you could be religion at washing a car if you had to, but faith. And I think learning from my own child of never being judgmental, but always understanding. You know, I didn't get that from the Black churches. I didn't get that. So I'm in transition all the way around when it comes to religion and all these other. We always, again, want to judge all these other things, but we're not talking about the stuff that's really impacting the Black community. And by that, I mean, you know, racism and police brutality. You know, but as long as I'm tithing and you feeding me the stuff you think that, you know, that's nice and kosher. I mean, you deal with all these other things, but you're not dealing with the stuff that's really impacting us. And I agree that, listen, they could do more. Yeah, they could do more. They could do a lot more. But I think you also seeing the changing too of why people aren't going to be going to church houses too much because of these reasons.
Well, are there other questions, or should we start bringing it to a close? Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to thank our guests again for coming. Gwendolyn Woods, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Love you. Appreciate you.
Yeah. And Lisa, thanks for coming and sharing about Sean and the library project. And let's be sure to get that letter together, even if it's small. Support Chaser. Just take action in some way. Be involved. Don't let this just sort of end, when we go off the screen here. And thanks for joining us today.